30 minutes. That was all Ethan Caldwell had before the biggest deal of his life collapsed. His French investors were already on their way up the elevator, the contracts ready, the future of his company hanging by a thread. Then his translator disappeared in a sudden accident. Panic set in. Hundreds of jobs were on the line, and there was no backup plan. Just as failure seemed inevitable, a quiet voice spoke from the doorway. It wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't an executive. It was the woman who cleaned his office every morning. When she said she spoke fluent French, no one believed her. But what she did next would expose a truth no one saw coming and change everything forever. Ethan Caldwell had closed deals in war rooms, airport lounges, and midnight video calls across 3 continents. He had stared down hostile takeovers and survived recessions that swallowed companies twice his size. But nothing in his 52 years prepared him for the quiet terror that crept into his chest that morning, standing alone in his glass office overlooking Manhattan. The clock on the wall read 9:30 a.m. At 10 sharp, representatives from Beaumont Group would walk into his boardroom to finalize a cross-border investment that would redefine Caldwell Global Ventures. The deal was massive, hundreds of millions. Years of planning, thousands of jobs depending on a single signature, and Ethan had just learned his translator wasn't coming. The phone call replayed in his head like a bad echo. An accident, highway, serious injuries, hospitalized, no clear timeline. Ethan lowered himself into his leather chair, feeling the weight of the building press in on him. He spoke fluent English, decent Spanish, passable German. French, however, had always been the one language he'd postponed learning, convinced he'd always have someone else in the room to handle it. He pressed the intercom. "Linda, tell me again you found someone." On the other end, his assistant's voice was tight. "I called every certified French translator in the city. Everyone is booked or out of state. The earliest availability is late afternoon." "They'll be here in 20 minutes, Ethan said, his voice sharper than he intended. "This isn't a lunch meeting. This is protocol heavy, legal language, cultural nuance. They won't tolerate improvisation." Silence followed, thick and helpless. Outside his office, the usual hum of productivity had slowed. People sensed it. When a leader panics, an entire floor feels it in their bones. Ethan stood and walked to the window. New York sprawled below, indifferent to his crisis. 15 years earlier, he had arrived in this city with a borrowed suit and an idea no one believed in. He had built this company with discipline, precision, and an almost obsessive respect for detail. Losing this deal wouldn't just be a setback, it would be a public failure. A knock sounded. Robert Hayes, his CFO, leaned in. "We could explain the situation. Asked to conduct the meeting in English." Ethan shook his head immediately. "They flew overnight from Paris. For them, language is respect. If we can't meet them on their terms, they'll assume we're unserious." Another knock, softer this time. Melissa Grant from marketing hovered by the door, uncertainty written across her face. "What if we postpone?" Ethan laughed, but there was no humor in it. With people like the Beaumonts, postponement is a polite rejection. The clock ticked louder. In the hallway, a cleaning cart rolled quietly across the polished floor. No one paid attention to it. No one ever did. Claire Morgan moved methodically as she did every morning. Wipe, spray, fold the cloth. She had learned to work silently, to exist at the edges of busy places. After 4 years, invisibility had become a skill. She wasn't supposed to hear anything, but raised voices carried, so did panic. "French," someone said again, louder this time. "We need French." Claire's hand froze on the handle of her cart. For a moment, the world tilted. French. The word struck something deep in her chest, a door she had kept locked with effort and exhaustion. Paris. Boardrooms. Long tables polished to mirrors. Her own voice, confident and unafraid, negotiating figures that made grown men hesitate. She swallowed and pushed the memory away. That life was over. She had learned the cost of looking back. But as she passed Ethan's office, she heard the strain in his voice. Not arrogance, not anger. Fear. She recognized it. She had lived inside it once. Claire paused. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass wall. 43, hair pulled into a simple ponytail, cleaning uniform hanging loose on a body shaped by years of restraint rather than comfort. No makeup, no authority. Just another worker whose name no one bothered to learn. Keep walking, she told herself. That was safer. Inside the office, Ethan exhaled hard. If we can't communicate, we lose everything. The words cut through her resolve. Claire stepped forward and knocked lightly, almost apologetically. The room went still. Linda turned first. "Claire, now isn't a good time." "I'm sorry," Claire said, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "I couldn't help overhearing. You're looking for someone who speaks French." Ethan looked at her, irritation flickering across his face. "Yes, and?" "I speak French," she said, fluently. The silence that followed was heavy, almost uncomfortable. Ethan blinked. "You speak French?" "Yes." Linda's mouth opened, then closed. Robert stared. Melissa frowned as if trying to match the statement with the woman standing in front of them. Ethan rubbed his temples. "Claire, I appreciate the offer, but this is a high-stakes negotiation, not casual conversation." "I understand," she replied. "I lived in France for 12 years. That did it." Ethan looked at her fully now, not past her, not through her. For the first time, he noticed the calm in her posture, the way she held eye contact without challenge or submission. "You're sure?" he said. Claire nodded. "Completely." From the hallway came the distant sound of an elevator bell. They were here. Ethan's options collapsed into a single point: trust a woman he barely knew or lose the deal he had built his life around. "Linda," he said slowly, "get her something presentable, now." Claire felt her heart race as she was guided away, past doors she had cleaned but never entered. As Linda handed her a blazer from the executive restroom, Claire caught her own reflection again. For years, she had told herself she was done with that world, that survival mattered more than pride, that invisibility was protection. But standing there, adjusting the sleeves, she felt something stir. Not ambition, not revenge, recognition. As voices in French echoed from the boardroom, Claire closed her eyes for a brief moment. If she stepped through that door, nothing would be the same again. And somewhere between fear and hope, she wondered if she was ready to be seen. If you were in Ethan's place, would you trust her? Yes or no? The moment Claire stepped into the boardroom, the air changed. 3 men in tailored suits stood near the long walnut table, their conversation pausing mid-sentence. The eldest, silver-haired and composed, turned first. His gaze lingered on Claire with polite curiosity, then sharpened as she spoke. "Monsieur, veuillez excuser ce léger retard." Her French was effortless, not careful, not rehearsed. It carried rhythm, confidence, and something harder to fake: belonging. Ethan felt it like a physical jolt. The men exchanged brief glances. The younger one stopped checking his watch. The third, quiet until now, tilted his head, reassessing the room. Claire continued, her tone warm but precise, apologizing for the delay, complimenting the view, acknowledging the long flight from Paris. She didn't translate Ethan's presence yet. She was establishing ground, easing tension, doing exactly what experienced negotiators did before numbers ever appeared on paper. Ethan stood beside her, suddenly aware that he was no longer the most composed person in his own room. When the introductions finally began, Claire translated smoothly, but not mechanically. She softened phrases where French formality demanded grace and sharpened others where clarity mattered. She didn't just convert language, she carried intent across borders. 10 minutes in, Ethan leaned closer and whispered, "What are they saying?" "They're assessing whether you respect their process," she murmured back without breaking her smile. "So far, we're doing fine." That "we" landed heavier than it should have. As the presentation began, Ethan spoke carefully, pausing often. At first, Claire translated word for word, but gradually, subtly, something shifted. She began refining. When Ethan mentioned revenue growth, Claire contextualized it with comparisons to European benchmarks the Beaumont Group would recognize. When he spoke about expansion strategy, she added regulatory insights that made the plan feel grounded, not ambitious. The eldest Frenchman, Henri Beaumont, leaned forward. He asked a question, a long one, dense, technical. Claire listened, nodded, then responded in French without turning to Ethan. Ethan stiffened. She wasn't translating. She was answering. Claire addressed tax exposure, cross-border compliance, and potential audit risks. She referenced precedent cases from both the US and Europe. She even mentioned a regulatory shift that hadn't yet hit the mainstream press. The room fell silent when she finished. Henri smiled faintly. Ethan's heart pounded. He leaned in again, his voice low. Claire, what just happened? There's a problem in their proposed investment structure, she whispered back. A serious one. His breath caught. How serious? Serious enough to cost you millions in penalties if you sign it as his. Before Ethan could respond, the younger Beaumont spoke again, faster this time. Claire replied immediately, calmly, pointing to specific clauses and suggesting alternatives that protected both sides. Ethan watched the conversation unfold, realizing with a mixture of awe and unease that she understood this deal better than anyone else in the room. During a brief pause, Henri addressed Ethan directly in English. Mr. Caldwell, your consultant is impressive. Claire stepped in smoothly. Monsieur Beaumont is complimenting the thoroughness of the company's preparation, she said, deflecting the praise with practiced ease. Ethan caught the maneuver. She was protecting him, protecting his authority. The meeting continued for another hour, tension rising and releasing in waves. By the time a break was suggested, Ethan felt like he had been holding his breath the entire time. As soon as the French delegation stepped out, Ethan closed the boardroom door and turned to Claire. Who are you? He asked, not unkindly, but with urgency. And I need the truth. Claire remained standing, hands folded, posture composed. But when she met his eyes, something vulnerable surfaced. My full name is Claire Morgan, she said. I spent 12 years working in Europe, 8 of them as a senior operations executive for a multinational firm based in France. The words settled like thunder. Linda froze. Robert stared. Melissa's hand flew to her mouth. Ethan sat down slowly. Why are you cleaning offices? Claire looked at the table, then back up. Because 4 years ago, my husband was arrested for financial crimes I had no knowledge of. I was investigated, cleared, but publicly associated with the scandal. In that world, perception matters more than truth. Her voice didn't shake, but her eyes did. No firm would hire me, not after a Google search. I had a son, bills. I took the first job that offered stability. Silence filled the room. Ethan exhaled slowly. And the deal? The current structure exposes you to aggressive tax interpretation, Claire said, slipping seamlessly back into professional mode. I've seen similar arrangements flagged before. I already suggested revisions. They're listening. They're listening to you, Robert said quietly. Claire nodded once. Because they recognize experience. Titles don't matter to them. Competence does. The door opened. The Beaumonts returned. This time, Henri pulled out a chair for Claire and gestured for her to sit at the table. Ethan noticed the shift instantly. Respect had been granted. As negotiations resumed, Claire no longer stood behind him. She sat beside him, documents spread before her, guiding the conversation with calm authority. By the end of the session, the original deal had expanded. Safer, larger, better for both sides. When the Frenchman finally left, promising to return with revised contracts, Ethan remained seated, staring at the closed door. In one morning, the invisible woman who cleaned his floors had saved his company and exposed how blind he'd been. Claire gathered her papers quietly. Claire, Ethan said, after today, nothing can go back to the way it was. She met his gaze, uncertainty flickering beneath her composure. I know. He hesitated, then asked the question that had been growing in his chest since the moment she spoke French in his office. If you were me, he said softly, would you step into the spotlight again? Yes or no? The boardroom was quiet after the Beaumonts left, the kind of silence that only comes after something irreversible has happened. Papers lay neatly stacked, coffee cups untouched, the city humming faintly beyond the glass walls. Ethan remained seated, his hands folded in front of him, staring at a future that no longer looked the way he had imagined it just a few hours earlier. Claire stood by the window looking out at Manhattan. For years, she had avoided views like this. They reminded her too much of what she had lost. Now, instead of pain, she felt something unfamiliar settling in her chest. Relief and fear. Not the fear of failing, but the fear of being seen again. Ethan finally broke the silence. They didn't just agree to the deal, he said quietly. They expanded it. Safeguards, long-term collaboration, additional projects. You didn't just save us, you elevated us. Claire didn't turn around. I did what needed to be done. That's not modesty, or he replied. That's habit, and I don't want you hiding behind it anymore. She faced him then. The confident negotiator was still there, but so was the woman who had scrubbed floors at dawn, telling herself survival was enough. Ethan, she said carefully, today worked because it was necessary. Tomorrow is different. Exposure changes things. He nodded. I know, and I'm not pretending I understand everything you've been through, but I do know this. Talent like yours doesn't belong in the shadows. Claire closed her eyes briefly. Memories surfaced uninvited. Headlines, whispers, doors closing before she could explain. She had rebuilt herself by becoming smaller, quieter, safer. Stepping back into the spotlight meant risking all of that hard-won stability. I have a son, she said. He watched me fall once. I can't afford to gamble with his future. Ethan stood. I'm not asking you to gamble. I'm asking you to choose. He walked to his desk, opened a folder, and slid it across the table. This is a formal offer. Senior partner, head of international strategy, equity included. Claire stared at the folder, her hands trembling slightly as she opened it. The numbers were generous, the title unmistakable. And there's more, Ethan added. You changed how I see this company today. I don't want that to stop at one deal. I want us to reflect the values you demonstrated. Fair pay reviews for our service staff, a scholarship program for employees' children, education access. Her eyes filled despite her effort to remain composed. Why? Because competence deserves dignity, he said simply. At every level. Claire let out a shaky breath. For years, she had believed her story was about loss. Standing there now, she realized it had always been about resilience. I accept, she said, but on one condition. Ethan smiled faintly. I was hoping you'd say that. I finished my current week with the cleaning team, she continued. I trained my replacement. I don't disappear overnight. No one deserves to feel abandoned. Ethan nodded without hesitation. Agreed. The weeks that followed felt surreal. Claire moved from early morning shifts to late afternoon strategy sessions. She learned new names, rediscovered old instincts, and slowly allowed herself to inhabit both worlds without shame. When she told her son Noah, he stared at her in disbelief before smiling wider than she had seen in years. You never stopped being who you were, he said. You just paused. The revised contracts arrived from Paris sooner than expected. The Beaumont Group signed not just one agreement, but three. Caldwell Global Ventures entered a new chapter, one built not only on profit, but on trust and cultural intelligence. At the announcement meeting, Ethan stood beside Claire as he introduced her to the company. Applause filled the room, not out of obligation, but recognition. Claire felt it in her bones. Not validation, belonging. That night, alone in her new office, she sat quietly and let herself feel everything she had suppressed for years. Gratitude, grief, pride. Healing wasn't loud, it was gentle. It came in moments like this, when she no longer felt the need to shrink. She understood now that dignity isn't tied to titles, and failure doesn't erase worth. Life doesn't always reward talent immediately. Sometimes it waits until you're strong enough to carry it again. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all wasn't about success, but about seeing people fully. Because the most extraordinary abilities are often hidden in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone brave enough to look twice. As the city lights flickered on outside her window, Claire smiled softly, knowing she had finally come home to herself. How did this story make you feel? Did it change the way you think about second chances and hidden potential? If this story touched you in any way, share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to know where you're watching from around the world. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that it's never too late to be seen.